Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Charles Knight, Managing Vice President at Pariveda, and today we're unpacking something many see as a roadblock, a hurdle that's supposed to slow innovation, and that's AI governance. But what if we've got it backwards? What if governance isn't a brake, but an accelerator? Over the next hour, you'll see how leading companies, including NRG, are using governance to speed up AI adoption, unlocking value while simultaneously managing real risks. Instead of viewing governance as a set of handcuffs, they're treating it as a steering wheel, keeping innovation on course, aligned with business goals, and always focused on real impact. So as we dive in, I want you all to consider, how might governance serve both protection and innovation? When governance adapts to business needs, it becomes an enabling constraint. It's not a barrier to scale, but a foundation for thriving with AI. And now I'd like to introduce our experts joining me today. Heydi, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. Could you introduce yourself and share a bit about your role and how you got involved in AI governance?
Sure, and thanks for having me, Charles. Hi, all. So my name is Heydi Gonzalez, and so for us at NRG, as interest began to grow in generative AI, I partnered with my leader to help shape how would we responsibly explore and introduce this technology. That work quickly evolved into a cross-functional program, bringing together leaders, internal SMEs, key stakeholders to assess the readiness and define a path forward. And with some early success, we formed a dedicated data and AI team. And from the beginning, we knew we wanted to establish a dedicated AI governance function to ensure that we scale innovation with the right guardrails in place. I now have the honor of leading that team. And prior to this, I supported digital transformation and led enterprise-wide adoption and change initiatives at Energy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And Lauren, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the work you've been doing in this space at Pariveda?
Absolutely. Thank you, Charles. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Malik, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today for this session. For the past 15 years, I've worked at the intersection of people, process, and technology, helping organizations lead transformation with the focus on human experience, governance, and responsible adoption. Over the last couple of years, my work has centered on operationalizing AI governance across industries, translating abstract frameworks and regulations into practical, scalable practices that teams can actually use. My goal is to embed governance in a way that fuels innovation, ensures compliance, and builds trust organically within the organization and with key stakeholders. I'm excited to share some of the lessons we've learned with everyone here today and can't wait to get started.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you all, audience, for joining us today. We plan for this to be interactive, and so pay attention to the chats. We'll be dropping polls in there throughout, and we are going to have Q&A at the end. And so if you need help with anything technical related to the webinar, the polls, anything like that, please use the chat feature. We have our webinar admins available to respond and help you out there. If you have a question that you want to pose to Lauren or Heydi later on, please use the webinar Q&A feature. And even if you don't have a question, check out that feature because you can upvote questions, and we'll be answering questions that receive the most upvotes. All right, so before we dive into governance, we're going to take a look at the bigger picture here and really just explore why so many organizations still feel stuck with AI despite making major investments. It's not really for lack of talent, technology, or ambition. The truth is, the barriers to responsible AI adoption are all deeply interconnected. Value realization, technical foundation, workforce and culture, governance and risk, operational integration, and experience and trust. Imagine these as a system, not a checklist per se, where each area influences the others, and a weakness in one quickly ripples through to the rest. Now, Heydi, you have lived through these challenges. Which of these roadblocks tripped up NRG, and how did you start moving past them?
You're on mute, Heydi.
Apologies. One of us had to do that. So yes, Charles, for us, two areas that created the most friction early on was workforce enablement and value realization, as you mentioned. On the workforce side, we were all still learning in real time, navigating how to integrate new AI processes into existing workflows and what new skills or mindsets were needed. So, for example, understanding how to assess risk in the context of large language models and Gen AI requires a new thinking and collaboration across teams. From a value realization perspective, there's also a learning curve because Gen AI is still evolving. So we have to work closely with stakeholders to define what value looks like for them, whether that's efficiency, insights, or knowledge enablement, and how to measure it. These conversations are ongoing, but they've helped us build a more grounded and scalable approach to AI adoption.
Yeah, I think your example highlights how interconnected these barriers are. You mentioned workforce skills. I heard things about workflow and process. How do you measure value? And all of those things are influencing each other. Now, while every barrier deserves attention, there's one that threads through all the others, and that's really governance. And so we're going to be talking about that shortly. But right now, we want to hear from you, our audience. And so on your screen, you should see a poll asking about your biggest AI adoption barrier right now. And so take a moment to select the one that resonates most with your organization's current challenges. Yeah, I see technical foundation, workforce and culture, value realization. Nice spread so far, which makes sense. Yeah, pretty balanced across many. I don't see any on technical foundation, which is interesting. Now, Heydi, you mentioned workforce enablement was a barrier you all navigated early on at NRG. So can you share how, from a governance standpoint, you all began to address that?
Sure. I would say that our main challenge was preparing the workforce for Gen AI, especially being uncertain around the risk and how do we integrate it. So we address this through education, cross-functional collaboration, and by aligning our program with external frameworks like NIST, AI RMF, which is NIST AI Risk Management Framework, and following, of course, with EU AI Act. So by continuing to refine our strategies and support the employees through this learning curve, we're building that confidence in Gen AI and laying some groundwork for responsible and scalable adoption.
Yeah, I think the early focus on preparing your people is really key in a quickly evolving landscape. And it's that fast moving environment that points to why having proactive, kind of organization wide approach to governance isn't just helpful, but it's absolutely necessary and urgent. And the data really backs that up. Um, First, the financial stakes are sky high. So you'd mentioned the EU's new Artificial Intelligence Act. It states that it will impose fines of up to 7% of annual global gross income for major AI violations. And that's higher than penalties for data privacy or cybersecurity violations. And so that's not a slap on the wrist. That could pose as an existential risk to our organizations. Beyond that, second, the operational cost is also clear. So 43% of abandoned AI POCs aren't failing because of the tech. It's because of a lack of governance. And so it's time, money, momentum, energy, attention, all lost. And so nearly half of all pilots stall out, and the cost of noncompliance is getting steeper every day. So getting governance right isn't just a best practice, it's really critical for survival and success. So, Heydi, what made AI governance a board level priority at NRG?
Well, As I mentioned earlier, right, we knew we needed AI governance function. So that way we can scale and again, continue to build responsibly. And so what became a board level priority was that as we recognized the pace and complexity of Gen AI, what were we introducing were new types of risk and traditional governance structures weren't designed to manage. I mean, this just, started 2.5 years ago. So there's still a learning curve from all of us to understand the real impact. So there was a clear need to ensure that we could explore these technologies responsibly with the right safeguards. And so I'm going to sound like a broken record, but this is why we also aligned our approach with external frameworks like NIST and the EU AI Act. And that helps us build this structure and credibility for our efforts. That alignment combined with a growing interest from leadership and understanding both the opportunities, the risks, right? That helps us elevate AI governance to a strategic conversation at the board level.
Yeah, I think it's really telling that early on you all had the foresight to focus on this space early and to seek out, some of these credible organizations like NIST and the EU AI Act to guide you. But of course, even with leadership buy-in and the right frameworks in place, the path to effective AI governance is rarely straightforward. Teams still face real challenges and obstacles that can slow and stall progress altogether. So, Lauren, I'm wondering if you can walk us through the common pain points organizations run into once they've committed to governance.
Absolutely. So, even with the best intentions, governance gets a bad rap. It always has, and it continues to get a bad rap. It's seen as the red tape, the toll gate that slows things down instead of moving them forward. And too often, it's an afterthought until it becomes a roadblock and your POCs are stuck and you need to get them moving forward and you don't have governance in place. So we've seen 5 core challenges over and over again, not just for AI governance, but for governance holistically across data and cyber and so many other types of governance as well. Regulatory uncertainty. The rules are constantly evolving, especially in compliance heavy sectors, creating confusion, hesitation, and additional risk. AI introduces a new kind of risk, bias, privacy, security. So risk management is even more important. But managing them without shutting down innovation is a very delicate balance. Integration challenges, so siloed systems and outdated workflows make it really hard to apply governance consistently or efficiently. Stakeholder trust and transparency, without that clear oversight, trust breaks down and teams and end users start questioning the fairness and accountability of AI decisions. And then, of course, the big one, innovation versus control. So, like, too much governance slows down progress, but too little invites risk. So, how do you find that perfect balance to get it right? So, Heydi, which of these pain points has resonated the most with NRG, and how did you reframe governance as an enabler?
So, first, we need to understand that we are not going to always be the popular people in the group. Right. And so obviously that goes back to the learning and the mindset changes that we needed to go through. But one of the biggest challenges for us is and will continue to be that governance is seen as something that would slow things down, right? Especially since we're building a new program around a new rapidly evolving technology that many people haven't worked before with. And that includes third-party vendors. They're also still learning through this landscape. So for us, the way we reframed governance is by being transparent about why risk management was embedded. And so we started by ensuring that we were embedding our risk management process into the project lifecycle from the beginning by introducing elements like a risk profile, doing adversarial testing. For some of you, that is red teaming or jailbreaking, and of course, monitoring. We're not just identifying risks, we're showing how we'd manage them. And that helped us speak the same language as executives and what they're hearing externally, and of course, makes us feel a little less like a gate and more like a guide for responsible experimentation. We are not saying that when you see us coming, this is something that's going to halt your progress. This is more about together figuring out the risk, how are we mitigating, and ensuring that we're all aligned and being able to prove and provide that story to leadership to get the proper approvals.
That's great, Heydi. And what I heard you say is that governance can't be the bolt-on. It has to be embedded directly into delivery, workflows, tools, and rhythms. It should support, not slow down innovation. And by building it into how you operate today, it helps do that for you. So let's talk a little bit about how organizations need to scale their AI efforts, and governance must be a part of them. So it's not enough to apply guardrails at the project level alone. Smart governance spans from delivery teams to the boardroom and connects all those internal pressures and external pressures to make better decisions. So external forces, the regulatory updates, public trust concerns, those all help influence what we're doing from a governance perspective. But at the project level, governance gets real. This is where the risk reviews are, the prompt evaluations, like you said, the red teaming and adversarial testing, all those sign-offs, like done right, these activities protect the organization without slowing down innovation. So it has to be built into the entire architecture of the organization, not just at the project level, not just at the policy level. It has to span and be a part of, embedded into the culture and architecture of the organization. So how has NRG, Heydi, adapted the enterprise to be able to support AI efforts?
Well, similarly as to what you mentioned, we stay ahead by embedding governance into the way we work and being flexible, right? And without making it feel like it's a burden. Since Gen AI is still new for many, we focus on transparency and again, bringing them in the journey and explaining why risk management is part of the process and how it supports their innovation. Early on, we collaborated closely with legal, privacy, and security, government, and regulatory affairs. Each of us has a responsibility to ensure that we're mitigating any operational gaps and that obviously we are addressing all of this in a responsible way. And that goes along with introducing tools, policies, alignment again with the regulations, and because this is such an iterative process, we continue to refine the approach, again, to fit both our governance goals and then the way that teams actually work. And that flexibility helps continue to build the trust and makes us seem more like a partner than a blocker. And that's going to be the common theme, right? It's just being seen as a blocker, but being able to speak the language that they're speaking, being able to introduce it in a way that they understand, that is a partnership along the way so that we are, again, together, we're aligned to ensure that we're being responsible.
That's a perfect segue into this next thing where we talk about governance isn't a bottleneck. It can be a strategic enabler if you have the right people and you do it in the right ways. So with the right intake processes, cross-functional teams, and delivery controls, we can unlock more value while still safeguarding the business. So having like helped our clients solve different governance needs, and you, Heydi, having done this at NRG for the last couple of years, these are some lessons that we've learned together, right? So what are the different aspects that we need to do in order to create that successful governance foundation? Heydi just alluded to this, but like we have to have those cross-functional teams. We have to be partners with all aspects of the organization to really make this successful. Having the right intake process, knowing what AI solutions or AI functionality is being requested is super important so you can get ahead of it. So you can see what risks are out there before they become AI solutions that are in production. And then integrating it into delivery like we've already talked about. So Heydi, how did you build momentum and support internally? And who were your first key allies when you were setting up like the cross-functional governance teams at NRG?
Well, to build momentum, and this is very similar to what other organizations are doing, right, is to start small and use a couple of POCs to explore the capabilities, and then embedding governance into the delivery, right? Like I mentioned before, through risk, through testing and monitoring. And so that helps show governance in action. Our first key allies were forward-thinking stakeholders who were willing to challenge the norm and explore responsibly. And so their support helped us demonstrate these early wins to build that credibility. The way we approach governance is at three levels. So it's enterprise, and that's again aligning with frameworks like NIST and EU AI Act, and that's to show the board, right, and as an organization that this isn't something that we're just making up. We are staying relevant with regulations, with AI acts, with executive orders, with anything that comes our way, and we're embedding that into our current framework from a portfolio perspective. That way there's a broader view of how this is going to impact the organization. At a project level, we embedded those controls to scale based on the size and the risk of the initiative. So it's not one size fits all, and there are still projects that are helping us learn and gather more data that allows us to come back and evolve into that framework. So, excuse me, that structure continues to evolve and build trust across the organization. And it embeds in the learning that Gen AI muscle that we're having to learn now as we continue to move down this journey.
Great. And like you said, it's a journey, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither was AI governance. So it's a journey that we have to be on together. And it's you have to turn policy into practice, and that's one of the hardest things to do. And it's not one and done. So like this slide here shows what an AI journey governance could look like in practice, but it's all about starting with the structure and then testing it and then ensuring adoption through training and consistent feedback loops. So this is a living capability. It's not a one-time checklist. You have to continuously go back, reevaluate, and figure out how to continue to evolve with regulations, but also make it work for your organization. So what did NRG's journey look like, Heydi, and where are you guys at today?
So we've implemented intake and adoption, and thanks, Lauren, for helping us go through some of these processes as well. But we've already implemented that and delivery. And so we're now focused on refining and strengthening monitoring. And again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I hope that you all take this with you. One of the key takeaways is the fact that we need to build this with risk management at the top, right? So that requires understanding what these Gen AI capabilities bring, what are the risks, and then aligning that through our enterprise risk management framework, educating stakeholders and executives, and of course, tailoring the approach to fit our operating model. And even further, how does it fit the teams that are working on these solutions? So as the technology continues to evolve, so will our approach, and we're just going to ensure that we continue to mature alongside it.
And it all starts, like we said, the whole journey starts really with that intake process. So what are you doing at the beginning? Governance begins at the idea stage. You can't wait for an AI project to mature before applying governance to it, because then you're behind. You're behind and playing catch up the rest of the time. So it should begin while the idea is still forming. This will help prioritize high value use cases, low risk ideas early, and get ahead of any known risks associated with these different AI solutions. So I know your use case looks a little, your intake process here looks a little different because you guys have embedded it into your existing PMO practices today. So how did you shift this intake process to better get those early stage AI ideas so you can manage early and often with those?
Sure. So initially, it was about what did we need to do right now? And the right now, a year or two ago, was to ensure that as we were going through the small scale of POCs, we were embedding some risk management, but it was really around understanding how we're prompting, how we're evaluating, what do we need to think to build a solution in a responsible way. And so that was the right now. Soon as we got into a couple more POCs and actual AI solutions for the organization, then we shifted that approach to include the risk profiling and the risk assessment at the beginning of the project. So for us, this starts at the business case process, and that's twofold. That's obviously one, so that project teams understand what risks may come their way and how we need to start thinking about how do we mitigate them, and two, to educate our stakeholders, right? Our stakeholders also still need to understand what this capability brings in. These models have different versions every other month, and therefore there's new things that come our way, which will introduce new risk. And so it is our job to obviously evaluate what those risks are and how does it impact the organization. So it's critical for us, and I encourage everyone to do the same, that need to partner with your PMO and your product management team, and they can help shift this mindset as well and this new muscle that we have to learn. So using brainstorming sessions with business stakeholders to frame those ideas and then turn them into what is the art of the possible, right? And how does that impact? So that collaboration helped us prioritize responsibly and embed AI governance into the delivery from the start. And it obviously helps us take the stakeholders along with us through the journey. Should this be, a high risk project, then obviously together we build that story, we put in the risks, what are the mitigating actions, and then we present that to continue to move forward.
Let's have some fun, Heydi. So we're going to take a real use case through this process, just to give give everyone who's here today an idea of like what this looks like and why this is so important. So, Heydi, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to talk through like as a business stakeholder, pretend like you're a business stakeholder and you have an idea for an AI solution and you're facing challenges today. And we're going to create a use case together and then take it through this intake process. So, Heydi, what processes or activities do you have that need to be improved?
So we need help with handling repetitive customer questions related to account status, invoicing, billing, order tracking, technical support, and service troubleshooting.
Okay. And why does this need to be improved? Like what's not working well about it?
Well, our agents are overwhelmed, right, with basic inquiries. Those usually get into the queue and it just creates a long queue. It delays our resolution, inconsistent answers, and of course, low customer satisfaction scores because we keep them on hold while we figure out go look at the information in different systems for what they need.
Yeah. And like who is mainly impacted or would be impacted by this challenge?
Our call center agents, our customer representatives, and of course, our customers.
Okay, so like how might we use AI to help with this solution? Like what ideas do you have where AI might be able to streamline this process for you?
Um, I think from a customer support and the call center teams to try to streamline that process.
Okay. And what would that help? What would that support? Like what would that actually be doing within your workflow today?
I would want it to automate some of these responses, especially for, the common themes of what customers are usually calling for. So I want it to automate some of our repetitive questions, things like your account status, password resets, billing inquiries, order tracking. And this would reduce our agent workload, right? Our call times can decrease, our average handle time can decrease. It improves the efficiency and consistency of our answers, and it elevates customer satisfaction while creating the capacity for more complex support so that our agents can actually tackle, customers that are waiting on the line with real complex situations.
Now, this sounds like a great AI use case. So let's explore a little further. And if you're not paying attention, please pay attention now because we are going to use this to do a risk assessment here in a minute. So this slide, this concept card, if you will give you all the information you need to make a decision around the risk of this AI use case. So this concept card is a template that Pariveda uses to better understand and be able to compare AI solutions, apples to apples versus apples to oranges. So we're going to dig a little deeper into your use case, Heydi. So does this chatbot need to support multiple languages?
Yes,
Okay. And what data is it going to be using? Like what data is it going to have access to?
our customer data,
Okay. And will you need to consider like multiple countries or is this primarily just in the United States?
international.
International. Okay. So large reach here. So we're going to take this concept card, this overview of this use case, and we're going to go solve the AI solution risk together. So if you, in the chat, we just put a link to this poll. We ask everyone to go in there and click one box per row of what you think the risk for this use case would be. And then we're going to walk through it together. So click on the box, one per row, based on what you heard from our use case overview. Seeing quite a few groupings spanning across here. I'll give everyone another couple seconds to finish their responses. Okay, this is looking good. So we're going to jump in and then Heydi and I are going to talk a little bit about how we thought about the risk of this use case. So I'm going to go to our calculator. So give me 1 second. I'm going to switch screens for you. And we're going to walk through this. Everyone will get a link to this calculator after the webinar, but this will allow you to assess the risk and value of your use cases. We're only going to do risk today from a time perspective, but you will have access to this, and this will help you evaluate your use cases from a risk and value perspective. So, Heydi, let's talk about our use case. So, from an AI solution standpoint, is this an off-the-shelf solution, or are you guys going to develop it internally?
Internally,
Using a third-party model, or are you going to build a custom model?
third-party model.
Okay. From a data sensitivity perspective, what are you thinking?
It's highly sensitive data
And why is that? Why is it highly sensitive data?
because it's got our customer information.
Yep. And it has
And obviously there's different regulations in different states.
Yep. Especially in like the utility space or healthcare, any sort of customer data is highly regulated, and which makes it high risk. Access, who is going to have access to this tool?
Internal at this time.
From a capability standpoint, is this going to have ability to be fully autonomous and send emails on the behalf of your call center, or what level of autonomy is this solution going to have?
We're going to do the makes decisions with limited human oversight. We're not ready to just let it go free.
And then from a output quality and accuracy perspective, if something were to happen and go wrong with the solution, it sent out the wrong invoice or did something incorrectly, what would the cause of that, or what would the disruption of that be?
Being that we're maintaining this internal, it really would just be errors, cost delays, but workarounds are available.
So that would make your solution high risk. I know based on the results we just saw from a lot of you, you're thinking it's probably on the lower risk side, but due to the fact that it has a lot of autonomy, still has human in the loop, but still has a lot of autonomy and is dealing with highly sensitive data, this makes this a high risk solution that has to be governed accordingly to ensure that the regulations and risks are being managed appropriately. So I'm going to switch back over to our presentation. And this just shows you kind of what we selected and why, but this would make it a high risk AI use case. Okay. So now we have the use case, we know the risk of it. What happens? Well, it needs to go through some sort of review process. So we've set up AI governance councils or AI review committees, whatever you want to call them, some sort of forum for all these AI ideas and concept cards and initial risk assessments to go through. They aren't meant to be a roadblock. It's meant to be a resource. It's meant to advise, surface new risks, and ensure alignment to organizational policies and organizational best practices. So these AI councils aren't really meant to be like roadblocks or like go, no go decision-making committees. They're meant to inform and provide additional insights into risks that could be underlying of these AI solutions that you may not be aware of. So Heydi, how have you clarified your AI council's role and built trust across teams that they're not going to be the roadblocks that people think they are?
Well, so as I mentioned earlier, we brought a couple of stakeholders across the organization when we were doing this as a cross-functional program and clarifying those roles early on, right? Obviously, some things changed along the way and, different ownership took place, but bringing in the right stakeholders early on is what enables this to be more transparent and continues to help build that trust. So we're still learning. So it's better to bring teams along from the start, ask the questions, surface the risk together, and then align on what responsible AI looks like for us. And this is going to be based on each of the initiatives that you have going on. So again, it's not a cookie cutter, not in this space, maybe in a couple of years, but at this time, there's still a lot of risks that are being introduced. As I mentioned, the models continue to have new capabilities, new reasoning capabilities. And so then we need to address as they come our way.
Great. So the intake part is just one piece of it, right? So then you have the whole rest of the software development lifecycle where you have to integrate and incorporate risk management best practices. So this is just an overview of like where those checkpoints and toll gates could be within that process. How have you guys implemented this at NRG, Heydi?
So we developed those governance checkpoints across the project lifecycle. I think, like I mentioned before, when we were saying what is the right now and what's important, it's really down at the core of where the work is taking place. And so developing those checkpoints through the project lifecycle, and as we continue to learn more and have more data and more projects and more agents built out, then we continue to iterate and refine those processes. And so that helps us to continue to stay aligned with how the teams work. We continue to enhance our reporting and observability to monitor those risks and impacts in real time. So it safeguards and evolves the solutions for us. As I'm looking at this now, Lauren, one of those safeguards, though, to mention is that we developed the adversarial testing. And so that's both from a technical practice, right? And also from a governance checkpoint. From a technical practice, we need to make sure that the model is adhering to that solution and to the information that it's being grounded on. But from a governance checkpoint, it's also helping us ensure that we're able to communicate and say that it's performing the way that it should. And that's going to be pretty important to understand what is that task accuracy and how it's performing and is it doing what it's intended to do. So monitoring is very important to have in place. And so we pair that structure by getting building out some questionnaires that, again, are aligned to our NIST AI RMF framework. And we review that with the project leaders, the technical teams, iteration, all prior to development. So it helps us to continue to be resilient, support these potential risks, ensure we're aligned to our standards, and again, make that readiness before it goes to production. So continue to build that shared accountability and responsibility of AI across the organization.
And Heydi was mentioning these questionnaires. These are based on the NIST and the EU AI Act. And these questionnaires are aligned to the software development lifecycle, but they should be shared at the very beginning of a project. So that by the time the teams are getting to these questions, they should already know the answers. They should have already planned for them. So while they're targeted for certain phases of delivery, they should be shared from the very beginning of a project, and teams should be thinking about how they're going to address these concerns, questions, risk aspects throughout the design and development of their solution. And the adversarial test cases that Heydi was talking about are designed to help validate that we do have all of these different questions addressed or covered if they should be considered for that particular AI solution. Not all these questions apply to every single AI solution, so you have to use your best judgment when it comes to that as well. So what do we do with all this information, right? So we have these questionnaires, we have the initial risk assessment, we got the concept cards. How does all of that turn into something that's meaningful for the governance teams, for the development teams, for the PMO teams, for the board, if your board is really interested in what's going on with your AI solutions? So we've created these little one-page views of these different AI solutions that allows you to keep track of, like, what is the conditional approval criteria? Sometimes legal teams will say, you can move forward with AI solution, but you have to consider the contractual and legal terms for all of your customer contracts, right? So that's a conditional approval criteria we need to consider and document and have a mitigating action for. Same thing with solution risks. All the risks should be documented and tracked. So this just gives you a one-page overview of what this can look like. And Heydi, like, how are you guys using something like this in your practices today?
Well, similar to what I mentioned earlier, this is part of one of our checkpoints. And so it's very important that we build that out through the project lifecycle so that you're able to contain and have all of the information that you're going to need to ensure that you're ready to move to the next step. And so it doesn't necessarily need to be that this is just performed at the end and have, a scorecard at the end of a project. This is that building that you're doing from the business case all the way up to when you're ready for a go, no go.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about monitoring. We've mentioned it several times throughout this presentation today, and it's one of the more difficult things because there's so many different kinds of AI monitoring, right? We were like figuring out, well, there's governance monitoring. It's checking to make sure all of your AI solutions are compliant with the regulations, and there's operational monitoring. So once it's in production, how are you tracking hallucinations and KPIs and other things? And then you have during development, how are you testing and making sure that from an adversarial standpoint that you've checked all the boxes? So there's so many different kinds of monitoring, and there's not one tool out there that does all of these things. And so I know NRG has come a long way in what you're doing from a monitoring perspective. I would love to hear more, Heydi, about your adversarial testing and like what you guys are doing to partially automate that and how that's helped you implement monitoring in a more sustainable way for NRG.
Sure. So it's still a learning curve and still a process that we continue to iterate. But what's important here is to be able to have these test cases that are aligned to, again, your organization and what are those things that you consider that an employee, right? So think of this as, again, you're building an AI agent. So think of that as an employee. So what are those guardrails, policies that you're wanting to put in place, or excuse me, that you have in place that you want that agent to adhere to? And so that's the same concept that you should take to think about how you're going to build adversarial testing. Adversarial testing needs to take place, especially in, again, in this space that we're in, where we're still wanting to truly understand how the Gen AI capabilities work and the impacts and the risks that it comes with it. So it's really important and critical for you to build in a process where you're doing this adversarial testing to ensure that you're not opening the doors, or also that an agent isn't going to ask, a real human isn't going to ask, is going to ask maybe some potential questions that you haven't addressed. And so you want to make sure that the model is not answering those questions, right? So it's really important that you build that testing into the process. Now, this is still a manual process, and so that can take a long, that does take a long time, right? In some cases, depending on the solution and the scale and the size of it. So being able to put in some automation in place is very important. We've built a couple of AI agents on our end that are helping us and will continue to help us monitor these solutions. So we're not saying that this is going to be just at the hands of the AI agents, but it's definitely helpful for it to increase our efficiency in how we test this, to have some automation in place. I do not think that, in a couple of years, it's just going to be something that we just give all of this to an AI agent to go monitor your solution and test it. No, it's still going to require your integration and your information to be put in place. Again, depending on what you're doing at that level, what solution are you building? What's the risk with the solution? What are those thresholds that you're willing to accept or not? So it continues to evolve. So I do not see this at this time being something that you just fully automate, but it's both helpful and from an efficiency perspective. So actually quite funny, we're building agents to help our workforce and our business stakeholders be more efficient. Why not also do that for ourselves?
That's great. I love that. I'm excited to see where that goes and like how far you guys can get some of the automation from an adversarial testing and monitoring perspective. So before we go into Q&A, which is coming up next, I just wanted to just make a note that like done right, governance can be a differentiator. It can be a competitive advantage. It builds trust, it reduces risk, and it allows you to scale responsibly. Heydi, I know you guys have done a lot with like shared responsibility matrices and like really getting that cross collaboration across the different teams. Can you share a little bit more about that before we head into Q&A?
Sure. And this was put in place to help the board understand how AI governance is being operationalized in the organization. So what we did is developed a shared responsibility matrix, and this was in partnership with our cybersecurity and privacy functions. It's a work in progress, but it's already helping us identify and mitigate potential gaps while we continue to reinforce and we collaborate across the functions. So since implementing AI governance, we have a stronger collaboration across these teams, and we're seeing a real shift towards this shared responsibility, right? Initially, there may be some apprehension and some resistance, but it's always important to take them through that journey to understand what you're doing and then bringing people along. So being able to partner with legal, privacy, security, it is super, super paramount for you to do that. It continues to keep you transparent and it brings the people alongside, which has made a big difference for us. And as I mentioned before, we're building this muscle to adapt, right? And because Gen AI, doing something in a month or two with Gen AI and the new capabilities that are available, by the next month, it's almost like a year past. because there's some new capabilities enabled, and now you got to shift a bit to see how you're going to frame that and bring that back into your organization. So it's really paramount that you build that relationship. For us, a shared responsibility matrix across at least these three departments was very important. It's critical, and we continue to evolve alongside it.
Yeah, and it's really cool that the data team is now able to use part of your AI risk assessment to assess the data privacy needs from their team. So it's been really cool to watch that unfold and have the different teams learn from each other as well. Okay, Q&A.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Heydi and Lauren, for sharing your insights and your experiences. Now we'd like to open it up for audience questions, which we already have some in the queue and they have been upvoted. Please continue to share your questions and upvote because we will start with those that you all are most interested in. And so let's see here. First question. It's, have you seen the emergence of shadow AI efforts or initiatives, and how are you managing these? And I'm going to direct that one to you first, Heydi.
Thank you. That is always a hot topic, right? Especially when you think of our traditional way of working and having shadow IT. Where we've seen an emergence of this is in tools, right? Because there's so many different tools coming out today, again, around, oh, we can help you summarize, we can help you be more efficient, productivity for yourself. And people are not, not yet quite understanding the impacts of what you're doing as you're sharing your data with these tools. So what we've done, at least to help us mitigate that from early on, this was done prior to even coming up with a cross-functional program, was to build in our NRG AI policy. And so within that policy, we've built in some of these guardrails, but this isn't something, I think we can all attest to this. It's not something that will go away. But the way to manage that is obviously to understand what are the capabilities that, they were looking for. Is that something that we can bring in-house, that we can evaluate and then enable for the organization? So again, it's not that we're going to stop you. It's, as we're seeing new technology come through and then new capabilities be enabled, then let's evaluate that. If that is something that, it's worth it for, a large population of the enterprise, then let's talk about how we're going to safeguard that, and then we bring it in and enable it. This is just going to continue to iterate, but you definitely need to keep an eye out, because there, a lot of vendors and a lot of tools, existing relationships you may have today are going to come to you with, hey, look at us, we now have this new capability, but you just need to make sure to do your due diligence to understand what that capability and the impacts.
A lot of it's about awareness and education as well, and just making sure
Yes,
you have that
continuous.
line defense combined with the tooling to help support that.
Yeah, so I'm going to pivot to a related question. I think because these tools and vendors are coming out with new things all the time, maybe Lauren, I'll direct this one to you. How do you approach staying on top of updates in this space, whether that's from a regulation standpoint or new models and things like that?
Yeah, so Hayden and I have had a lot of conversations about this one. And so, well, I mostly just have a lot of Google alerts, if I'm being very honest. Like Google alerts on like every time a new bill or legislation's passed, anytime anything's new is coming out. But what we also have is there's a bunch of model evaluation tools out there and like really great resources to like see what's going on with models, what the latest updates are, what their safety cards look like for each of those models. And so I rely heavily on these third-party sources that have all the models, all the safety cards, what's the latest update, what's included in that safety package, and then combining that with my own research and alerts that I have and different resources I use to stay on top of all the different regulations that are coming out as well, which then feeds into frameworks and tools that we have internally.
All right. So I'm going to do one more question. And then for the questions that we don't get to, we are going to answer those and share those back with you all. So if we didn't get to your question, never fear. Heydi, I'm going to do this one. I'm excited about your answer here. So Heydi, beyond governance, what gets you excited about AI? And do you also use it outside of work?
What gets me excited is because I love a challenge. And, it's complicated, but being able to figure that out together with a team, right? And with the right partnership and collaboration, we'll get through it. The other part that I would say is I'm excited about being able to be in this type of emerging technology and in this landscape, missing out on the internet boom, right? And so I'm excited to be able to be part of something like that because I do think this is something that's going to be with us. It's just going to take time for us to truly understand all of the impacts, the risk, and we're going to continue to see this come through for probably the next couple of years till you can kind of get a good handle on it. Outside of work, I do use it. I am a huge proponent of sharing it with my family. I joke, but I really did do this, which is I downloaded ChatGPT and on my mom's phone, and hopefully she's not hearing this, but I downloaded it on my mom's phone, and I said, hey, when you're thinking about calling me, not that I don't take her calls, I do, but when you're thinking about calling me for certain types of questions like this, here's your Ask Heydi GPT. And, I taught them how to use that. And we continue to build that trust because, of course, they were a little bit resistant at the beginning. So we do use it outside. I think it's very important for you to explore and leverage the technology so you can understand how that technology works. And then obviously, how do you apply that to your daily job? And how do we continue to ensure we safeguard our organization at the same time?
Wonderful. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you both so much for answering these questions and for the audience and sharing those. I think we're going to pull back up the presentation here because we do want to leave you with a practical tool and we do have an offer for you. And so, Lauren, I'm hoping you can walk us through our AI governance readiness checklist.
Absolutely. So we said before, AI governance is a journey. It's a journey, and everyone's going to be in a different spot in this journey today. I don't expect anyone to have any or all of these different things checked off, but this is a great starting point to get you thinking about what you need to create the foundation for your AI governance journey. And so we are happy to meet you where you're at. We're going to give you each of you a copy of this at the end of the workshop. Will be emailed out to everyone who attended today, so you can kind of gauge where you are. But we're also happy to have a 30 minutes just working session with you on like where you're at from a governance perspective. Look at this governance checklist, answer any questions you didn't get answered today, and help you create action plan to get you guys moving in the right direction from a governance perspective. If you're interested in that 30 minute consultation for free with any of us on this call, please go to this link here, also in the chat, and you can just put in your contact information and we'll reach back out to you to schedule that information session with us.
Thanks, Lauren. And as we wrap up, we do want to get your feedback on today's webinar. Hopefully you've heard a theme around this is a learning journey. And so we are trying to learn from your experience here. And finally, I want to express my gratitude to Heydi and Lauren, our outstanding panelists. Thank you for your insight and your partnership. And thank you all again for joining, asking questions, engaging in this important conversation. And as you leave today, please remember, governance is not just a requirement, it can be our competitive edge. And so thank you again. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and you'll be receiving a follow-up set of emails. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.